I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Glad to be here and glad to have you along today. Got dear friends and colleagues on board for today's program, and more to join. But I see my cousin, Dean Burnell Venable Powell, former Dean of the Law School of South Carolina, my colleague, Yusuf and Jeannie, venerable communicator, master communicator, leader in St. Paul, and my dear friend, Clinton Collins Jr., an attorney, corporate counsel for Geico here in Twin Cities. Of course, my colleague and co-host here, Brenda Lyle Gray, a columnist for Insight News. Brenda, good to see you. I'm expecting several others to join us. And so, Kelvin, engineering, please watch out for others entering the waiting room and make sure that they can get in the studio. I had in mind talking about Afghanistan in particular. But that's one thing that's on my mind. I'm watching the news, glued to CNN and ABC, watching the reports. I'm also following what's happening in Haiti. I'm concerned about the plight, the suffering going on there and what we can do about it and how things seem to repeat themselves, how our policies and our attitude towards the history of Haiti is impacted by disaster on top of disaster. Of course, I continue to be concerned about the Delta strain of the COVID-19 virus. And what does that mean for us? I'm one of the ones that was fortunate to get in on the first wave of vaccinations with the Moderna vaccine early, I think in January, February. And I anticipate that when the announcements come, I'll be in the first group eligible for the booster shots. I'm wondering how my colleagues and guests both feel or what they're hearing about our community's response to both the need for and the opportunity presented by or the resistance to COVID-19. So those are the things on my mind. Let me just pass the microphone around the horn. And if you sisters and brothers have different ideas or different things, good time to bring it, put it on the table right now. We'll go to you first, Burnell. How you doing, Brother Burnell? Just unmute. Nope, you're still muted.
How's that?
Perfect.
All right.
Perfect.
I just want to say by way of introduction, I'm always thankful to be identified with the University of South Carolina, but I don't want you to leave out the University of Missouri, Kansas City, which is a place where I was being for an even longer time. But that having been said, the list that you suggest, I think, is a good one. We might want to touch on the threatened bombing that is currently taking place on Capitol Hill as we speak. Its significance, particularly in light of the fact that the domestic intelligence has been saying for some time now that right-wing terrorism is the major threat to this country.
I'm not up on that. I've been driving and just got back into a place here, so I'm not familiar with tell us what's happening right now as we speak.
I don't know all the details, but there is some character on Capitol Hill, somewhere close to the Supreme Court, and I believe congressional office buildings. And those buildings have been evacuated. The individual is in a truck, and he has told law enforcement that he has a bomb and that he is prepared to set it off. Maybe others know more about it than I.
Anybody following that or watching the news on that? Yusuf, are you up on that at all, or Clinton?
No, I'm not actually.
Okay.
Well, it's been going on for several hours.
Okay. And I see Dr. Hayden just joined us as well. Peter Hayden, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. Sorry to be so late. but
Not a problem.
I'm here.
We're just starting, and I set up that there's several topics we can talk about. One is what's happening in Afghanistan, and I had in mind particularly talking to you and Clinton Collins. I think the three of us are veterans. Yusuf, I don't know if you're a veteran, and I don't think you are.
No, sir.
But Clinton is, and Dr. Hayden is, and I invited, and I'm expecting Colonel David Rabb, who I do regular programs with. He's a retired psychological services officer with the Army, who actually spent time commanding troops in Afghanistan. So he may be joining the program as well. So Dr. Hayden, I was saying, let's talk about Afghanistan. Let's talk about COVID-19. Let's also talk about the situation in Haiti, and whatever else you may have on your mind. So that's kind of where we are. Yusuf, let me throw it to you. What's on your mind right now? And
I think that you raised a very good list, Al, and I'm comfortable with it. I think some of the other issues deserving attention are the debate on Capitol Hill about the other infrastructure bill that has been tossed around. Ted Cruz successfully sabotaged it, and the end result was Congress going on vacation for the remainder of the month of August and not returning until September. I think when we talk about Afghanistan, we've got to talk about the U.S. role over the past 30 years and the Afghan role in terms of the ghost troops, all of the munitions that the Taliban now has that were originally provided by the Americans, and how the government and the military basically just imploded. And we still have 7,500 Americans in that country waiting to be evacuated.
Brenda, what's on your mind today? What kind of things are top of mind with you today? You're still muted. Here we go.
I'm sorry. I was just kind of like contemplating just what I heard on the news. We just had 4 police officers shot about 50 miles from where I live in Albuquerque. And the disturbing thing is that they're now shooting above the vest. And I think one of the bulletproof vests did save one of the police officers who was shot in the back. So really concerned about that. And I have a cousin who had served 3 tours in Afghanistan, and he predicted about 2 months ago what was going to happen. And he came home. A lot of corruption, a lot of money, a lot of Halliburton. We probably never will figure out or know for sure just who was involved and how long they've known. So my prayers are to get our Americans out and the people that helped us while we were there. So
Clinton
that's
Collins.
what's on mine.
Great. Clinton Collins, your first thoughts?
No, I think all of them are great topics. I mean, I think the Afghanistan thing probably bothers me the most. As you mentioned, I was a veteran, and I've done training when I was in the military. And I know that for training to be effective, the troops you're teaching have to buy into it. And from all accounts, we went in trying to change a culture that has existed for hundreds of years, and with typical American hubris, expected that we could turn things around in 20 years when you're dealing with systemic, I don't know if I should use the word flaws, but characteristics of that culture, which you can't easily fix. That we found out the hard way, that just because we pour money into something, as we did in Vietnam, that doesn't mean you're going to fix it. And we certainly blew it this time.
Peter Hayden, what's on your mind? What do you think about any of these topics? What's top of mind with you today?
First of all, as a service person, I was trained that no woman or man you leave behind. So when you talk about the 7,000 people that's still left behind, I'm just concerned. I was taught differently. The other thing is, Al, is out my window yesterday, North Commons, there was shooting outside of Turning Point, and there's no place sacred up here or anywhere else. So there's, again, like you have said, there's many topics that we could go with, but I'm going to go with just topics that relate to this country and outside my window.
Your mic is off, Al. Al, you're muted.
Thank you. I was taking a call from Colonel Rabb, who's trying to get into the show. Kelvin, would you send a fresh link to Colonel Rabb? He's trying to get in, but not able to get on to the call. And I'm interested in his point of view. He's recently retired from reserve duty, but a 20-year officer in the military. And I missed the last part of what you were saying, Dr. Hayden. But what I understood you to say was that the mission has always been to bring people back, to not leave anybody, and that
your brothers and sisters, bring them back.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how does that whole picture of the disengagement look to you as a veteran? When you look at, first of all, you served in both Korea and Vietnam, or just Korea?
Vietnam.
In Vietnam. Okay. And as a Vietnam veteran, when you look at what's happening on screen, what memories come to you? What impressions do you have?
Well, Vietnam.
Okay.
That's what comes to focus for me. What happened over there, and how it almost is a duplicate of what happened in Vietnam when I was over there. I had left shortly before that, but it was the same thing. It was a discombobulated kind of peace, and we again didn't work well with regards to what they should have been doing.
Okay. So we're now going to come back around to you, just to offer another set of comments on any of the topics.
Well, I am not a veteran, and since the Vietnam War, arguing that we should not have been there in the first place. I am at one with the thought that this reminds me of Vietnam all over again. I do think, though, that in this situation, the American public also believes that it is time to leave. And I am one of those who believe that we should have been looking for a way to end our involvement as early as possible. But at the same time, I'm torn by the way in which we have left. It seems like a self-inflicted wound to me. I believe that there was time to organize a efficient exit, and that time wasn't well used. It appears, subject to further disclosures by the president and his aides, but it appears that they simply decided to latch on to Trump policy that America was going to end its involvement in Afghanistan. And having made that commitment and made it publicly, they then seem to have been convinced that it had to be followed through in almost every detail. And we now know that apparently there weren't a lot of details.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, if somebody's keyboarding, maybe it's you, Clinton, but if you have to mute your mic when you're keyboarding, because the keyboarding is coming through, whoever's keyboarding. Brunel, Kamal, good to see you. Thanks for joining. And Kelvin, would you please try to send a link to Colonel Rabb? He has sent me a note that he wants to join the conversation, and watch for him. And again, if somebody's keyboarding while we're trying to walk, please mute your mic because the keyboard sounds are coming through pretty strong. Bernell, I want to sort of agree with you on this, how we're doing this, and with what Clinton said too. My daughter Batala called me to ask me my take on my synopsis on what the whole transition in Afghanistan meant. And the point I made, Clinton, was that if you want to do culture change, the requirement is more likely that you make a 100+ year investment, and that you intend that, and short of that, you are not going to make significant changes in a culture or in a people. What is the reasoning? The thinking is that everybody who's alive now has to be dead, right? And create a disconnection in some way to history and to a path that you want to supplant or move out and replace with some other different understanding that supports your sense of modernity, your sense of what democracy or whatever political persuasion you have. And it seems that we didn't have that commitment. The difference is looking at Germany after World War II, our troops are still there. At Japan after World War II, and at Korea after the Korean War. So our presence is sustained. And unless we're prepared to make the same kind of a commitment and investment, we can count on what happened in Afghanistan and Iraq to happen again. So that's my thought. Kamal, what do you think? What are your feelings? Unmute if you unmute. There we go.
Afghanistan they have been at war with each other for over a century. And then when foreigners come in, they stop fighting. When the foreigners leave, they go back to fighting each other. And this has been the history of Afghanistan. So when I understood going in to find bin Laden and Al Qaeda. I understood that, but nation building, we haven't really been good at that, except for when you talk about South Korea. We helped there, Taiwan, but nation building in a system like Afghanistan, I thought it was a long shot at best. Yeah.
Jump in, Yusuf. Thoughts, impressions, feelings.
Trying to unmute myself. I apologize.
Sure. Take your time.
My concern is the trillions of dollars that have been spent in that country over 30 years and what legacy or residue is left to indicate if and how it provided value-added benefit. A lot of people don't realize that we have 83 military installations on the continent of Africa. And we're dealing with childhood poverty, with single-parent families, with healthcare crisis, with miseducation, with the challenges that we have at home that the Republicans are uneven and unwilling, to even mention. But we're involved in all these military conflicts all over the planet at the same time. I think that our priorities have gone astray and really need to be reexamined. We're cutting taxes for the rich, raising them for the poor, and it just seems like we've got the cart way out in front of the horse in terms of our national priorities right here at home. And I think it shows around the world based on the lack of respect as a result of the last occupancy of the White House, that America's star was deservedly tarnished all over the planet during the Trump administration. And it's going to take, considerable time to try and reestablish what this country has stood for in the past.
Let me introduce all of you to my friend, Colonel David Rebb. He's retired from the Army. I believe, but he started off as a Marine, and he commanded troops in Afghanistan. He led a, I don't know, well, you can describe the discipline. You are a mental health professional, and
Correct.
you led a company of people providing mental health services and health services to American troops and combatants.
Mhm.
If I've described that wrong, please correct me, Colonel Rabb. Good to see you. Good to see you, my brother.
Yes, it's great to join you all.
Well, let me tell you who's here. So Kamal King is a retired attorney in Atlanta. You know Dr. Peter Hayden at Turning Point. I think, and you probably remember Brenda Gray, who's on my team. You might or might not know Yusuf Mjini, but Yusuf and I go back to way back when as communicators in Twin Cities. And then Professor Burnell Venable Powell, former dean of the law school at University of Missouri at Kansas City, and also at South Carolina. So we've been meeting here on a regular basis. And David Rabb and I have been also convening a group of veterans talking about healing and the issues impacting the lives of veterans in our country. So David, jump in. Impressions on what's happening with Afghanistan. I wonder what you think, having been in Afghanistan, the men and women on the ground now are thinking, feeling, and doing as we speak.
They're trying to survive. That's right now. Most likely they're being hit in all directions in terms of trying to defend, but also trying to take care of their buddies as well as the civilian population. And so it's scattered. It doesn't make sense. It's war. I mean, basically what you're seeing there is war. This issue of moral injury, it's right in front of us, right? Moral injury. And that's something that I've been talking about. You can have moral injury when you're not really clear about the values in which we are operating. And we're experiencing some conflicting values here. And it's right in our face. You can't hide. This is a moment of truth as well. A moment of truth in terms of how we are going to not only get through this, but also the support that we're going to give out to the people who are going to be needing us. And I'm looking also into the future, not just right now. I'm talking about like 5-10 years from now, when they're going to be part of our community, right? Because we're going to do the right thing. We're going to bring them in, but it's going to be the diversity, the inclusion already that is somewhat suspect as it relates to how we are performing. We just need to go to the Black community and what's happened on, in Minneapolis, St. Paul recently to know that, this is uncovered. And so I go back to what we're seeing as moments of truth. People, don't show me, as you were, don't tell me, show me. And I think America is showing us who we are.
Describe the conflict. You're saying this is a moment of conflict or competing interests. How would you describe the conflict in values that is being revealed in this moment of crisis?
Well, I like to go back to what I was taught as a soldier. Because I was in the military for 41 years. Was in the Marine Corps as a grunt infantry. I was in Afghanistan as a commander here at Fort Snelling for about 17 years before I went on to do other things for the military. And so what we see here is a clusterfuck. Excuse my French, right? And army speak, which means that it's sporadic. It's chaotic. But again, what's in front of us is war, right? And values. Let's talk about the values. The values is this. You know, what the soldiers in their heart are, you know, it's like accomplish the mission, right? I will always accomplish missions, right? I will never give up.
Now,
right? I will never. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
One of the indications of the chaos is that the suicide and trauma hotlines and help centers at the Veterans Administration have been ringing off the hook since the announcement of the withdrawal and the subsequent, chaos both in Afghanistan and within the ranks. And I think that's an indication of the kind of pain and mental health issues that this has surfaced among veterans of the conflict in Afghanistan.
Yeah, we were trying to, fight forward, but we have to look back. And what's happening is that, again, it's being revealed for Vietnam era veterans all the way up to this point. They're having to do a replay. They're having to go through the experiences again, and it's standard that typically in VA systems, as well as in this community, when we go to war, there's an increase in psychological challenges, not only for the service members or the veterans, but also for the family. So let's don't forget about them either, because they're going to have to pick up afterwards. And so, yeah, it's what I was saying is that, this is, the values. So the values, I will always place the mission first. I would never quit. I would never, leave a fallen comrade. What did we just do? I can go on and on, but it's going to be painful. It's going to be painful.
You use the term moral injury. How does the question of moral injury apply here? And then Brunel come in after that.
Okay. Moral injury is an injury to the soul, in a nutshell. Okay.
And you said moral injury is unfolding before us. What do you mean?
My. I mean, did you see at the airport that, leaving those people, just coming into it and getting out, and it wasn't really clean. It was chaotic. It wasn't orderly. It wasn't, it was unpredictable, but at the same time, it was outside this norm of what most people, most soldiers, most civilians actually are experienced in their life.
People falling off the plane, taking off.
Say again?
People falling off the plane, taking off. It's horrible.
Yeah, it was, but war again. Going back, being realistic, war is war. I mean, that's being war in front of us. I mean, that's it. It's coming into our TVs, our homes, our families, and the issue of repercussions. Because the impact of this is going to have a tail. Right? So this is just the beginning of the emotional impact that is going to stir up a lot of, especially again, the veterans, the Vietnam era veterans that have already seen this, right? I mean, the OEF veterans, right? In terms of trust, come on now. It's revealing who we are as Americans.
Brunel, go ahead.
I can't speak to the individual trauma. It's been eloquently described by, is it General Rob?
No, I'm just Colonel retired.
Colonel, all right, Colonel Rob.
Mm-hmm.
I said I had not served in the military. So,
all right.
Apologies. But I think Colonel Rob has eloquently addressed the question of the individual trauma. There's an additional aspect of this, however, that I do want us to think about. And that is in light of the fact that in 2 years, there's going to be a congressional election. And Up until this point, the president, Biden, was moving forward with a number of initiatives, and his brand was essentially working. We're already beginning to see that brand has been tarnished. What was that brand? Essentially, it was I am a man of who can bring together values, science, and technology to deliver objectives. And it wasn't grandiose. I can do this without tweeting every morning, without making bellicose statements, without attacking people. I can make government work for you. And what we have seen over the last 72 hours, basically, is a set of events that make a lie of that, or at least bring it into question. What values are you pursuing? Why are you pursuing the strategies that you've laid out? You have massive resources, and yet you can't assure us that our people, our citizens, our allies, the people who work with us, the people who are depending on us, will be able to get out of Afghanistan. And that is going to have political repercussions across the country. The question is how deep and how long. I will say or confess at this point that one of my initial thoughts was, if this goes on very long, the president may have to consider stepping down at some point in his administration.
Really?
And I say it this way: I don't mean to sound alarmist, but what the nation has been offered is a Biden-Harris ticket, and that Harris represents the transition to the future. And the question is, given all of the obstacles that we know that she is going to face, race and gender being two of the greatest, what position is she going to be in if she has to run on the Biden record? And unless Biden can turn this thing around, she can't go into an election on the Biden record. She's going to have to go into the next election on the Harris record. And that begins to be part of the conversation with the next congressional election. See, my dog is disagreeing with me. I'm sure
Yusuf, jump in here. What are your
Well,
thoughts?
Biden didn't make this decision on his own. He's not a military expert, and he's operating on the advice of the people in the Pentagon and the military, who at the top are still largely people who were appointed or placed there by Trump for very specific purposes because they supported Trump policies. And it was Trump who initiated the withdrawal from Afghanistan. It wasn't Biden. Now, Biden could have undone that or altered that, but he has to operate on the best intelligence that he can get in his military briefings. And unfortunately, they're selling him a load of horse poopy, and the consequences are what we see before us today. So there's always been a gap, in my view, in communication between the White House and the Pentagon. And I think that this is a good example that that communication gap continues to exist, because he did not get solid information. He did not make the decisions that he made about the withdrawal, with the understanding that the Taliban would overtake the capital in a matter of weeks. They thought he was told that they had months, that it would be orderly, that people would cooperate. And then you have corporations like Halliburton trying to stay until the 11th hour to milk the last dollar out of the American taxpayers. And this is what you get. So I think the military has to own a large part of this fiasco.
Go ahead, Brunel.
Since Harry Truman, the ethos of this country has been the buck stops here.
Mm-hmm.
Biden is the president of the United States. He's been so for a number of months now. whatever we want to say negative about Donald Trump, and I think that there are many, many things that we can say negative about him and what he did in terms of American standing around the world and his leadership here at home. But the next election isn't going to be about Donald Trump directly. It is going to be about Joe Biden and his leadership.
Yeah.
All I can say about that is chickens coming home to roost. You know, Obama wanted out, and he was convinced by the military that he couldn't come out. It's like Afghanistan is like a tar baby. You know, once you in it, it's hard to separate yourself from it unless you do like the French and the Russians and the British before us. Just leave, just get out. You know, this moral dilemma that Colonel Rabb was talking about, we have this idealistic thing is that, you know, we're not going to leave behind the people who helped us. We had to leave them behind in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. You know, two of them got out who could climb on those helicopters. Brother Youssef, you remember them trying to get off the embassy. It's the same thing. It's chickens coming home to roost. It's
well, come on, let me throw this in. We left them behind after the Civil War. We promised Black people a whole bunch of stuff that Black people never got. And so this idea of exposing the contradiction is real, because there are the values of democracy, inclusion, but the practical reality of what happened was far, far different. And we've lived in our lifetimes facing the dichotomy, the distance, the gap between the professed and the real. And this is, as Colonel Rabb is saying, a clear illumination of that point of conflict. Go ahead, Kamal.
But this is not a situation in which the debate ought to be over whether we should have been there in the first place or whether we should leave. This is a situation in which the debate, to Biden's detriment, is over how we decided to leave. 70% of the American public believe that we ought to be out of Afghanistan. And so, you know, he's got a constituency that he is able to address and which is sympathetic to his position. But they don't expect him to do it in a ham-fisted manner. So I'm not sure that this is chickens coming home to roost. Seems to me that this is poor planning coming home to roost.
Clinton, what do you think? Dr. Hayden? Unmute, Clinton. Unmute.
Turn your mic off.
Can't hear you. Unmute, yeah.
No, I've been listening to everything and taking it all in, and my biggest worry is 2022 and 2024. I mean, the American public, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your point of view, has a short attention span. Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at the things people worried about a year ago, and generally speaking, other than the pandemic, we aren't worried about them now, you know, or at least not talking about them in the same intensity. So the initial frustration will pass, and the anger towards Biden, should have done this, shouldn't have done that, will pass. But what I'm concerned about is the lingering residue of not appearing to be on top of his game and playing into that broader Republican narrative that he's past his prime, that he doesn't really know what he's doing. What was it? Senator Scott, was it Scott? One of the senators from Florida insinuated that maybe it was time to bring in the 25th Amendment, which is BS. But again, the fact that he would even broach that to suggest that the president is not competent to manage things is an indication of the lingering effect. And that's what I'm really worried about.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, he has about 14, 15 months before. And like you say, the American public's memory is short. So fortunately, this might all be, we'll have several other issues after this one's passed over.
I mean, if the pandemic gets under control and if the job market continues to improve, I mean, ultimately, people vote their pocketbooks. And for most people, their thought is, how does this affect me directly? And up until seeing these images of people falling off airplanes, 8 out of 9 Americans didn't really give an SH about Afghanistan. I mean, you know, you've been doing this podcast for a while now, Al. We haven't talked about it.
Nope.
I haven't worried about it. I haven't gone to sleep at night thinking about it. So I guess in some way that is Biden's greatest asset, is that hopefully the next several months, this will pass. The people who get out. The ones who won't. And then people are going to go back to those basic issues. How am I going to live? How am I going to eat? Am I going to get sick? Can my kid go to school?
Inflation.
I think ultimately that's what it's going to come down to. I don't even I think since Vietnam, we've never had an election turned on foreign policy, or at least not that it was pivotal.
Colonel Reb,
This will be pivotal a month from now, or
you will remember what happened to Jimmy Carter when the failed rescue plan took place.
Yeah.
Within a matter of weeks, his poll numbers plummeted. But I'm in basic agreement with you. It really does. This really is a situation in which Biden has time to recuperate. But it seems to me that means that he's got to get both the infrastructure bills passed. He's got to make sure that the Delta virus doesn't end up stalling the economy again. And he's got to demonstrate that he's in charge with respect to things like the immigration at the southern border.
He's also
it seems like these are macro considerations. Hold on, Yusuf. We're talking about the big picture, Brunel, but I kind of want to still keep in focus the personal. And Colonel Reb talked about the impact on those soldiers who are in and who have served in Afghanistan, and also triggering again those who served in Vietnam who have been underserved by our country and by our systems. And that to me creates this link, particularly to the work of Dr. Hayden. Dr. Hayden as a veteran, but also as a mental health resource in our community that helps our men and women who served deal with the trauma of their service and the challenges they have reintegrating themselves back in society. So how do we have this conversation that looks at the big picture, at the big things that the president must do, but that also is true in examining the impact of these big issues on individuals' lives? And if we do not look at the impact on individuals on the ground, are we failing in some way? Colonel Reb, I'm fishing here, but what do you think? Am I heading this in the right direction from your point of view?
Yeah, you are capturing it very well. And what can't be captured is the spirit of which things are done. The spirit of which things are done. I'm gonna show you a photo. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see this here?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That was a photo that was taken with the Secretary of Veterans Affairs about a month or two after I got out of Iraq in 2004. And the reason why he wanted to meet with Colonel Rabb was because he wanted to figure out, and he had all his leadership around the table, how can we take care of our veterans? Because what happened was back then, and again, there's a tale to it. Back then, the budget, and all things considered, everything needs to be part of the play. The budget, the federal budget, was going broke. I mean, pretty much. We didn't have the money to take care of the veterans. Hello, and so he approached me, right? And the only reason he approached me because I was commanding. I just got back from Iraq and Baghdad and all that. The only reason he approached me with his leadership team was, what do we do? How do we take care of our veterans? And I in the spirit, and that was, but the issue is they didn't have the money in the budget to do that. All right. And the same thing here. I know our economy is doing well, but you have to also think about the cost of the choice, the cost of soldiers coming back that are going to be hurt, spiritual, mentally, physically, etc. You have to factor in the cost of taking care of, again, our World War II, Vietnam era, OIF, OEF veterans, because, again, as was said earlier, when there's a war, the VA systems, they scratch, they don't know what, and so what you're going to see on the front end is that there's going to be a higher suicide rate. There's going to be a higher domestic abuse, all types of ethical issues that we're going to have to deal with because of this.
Drug addiction.
It's just not money. It's just not money. We're talking about people and their family. Come on now. We can do better than this.
Dr.
take one of those.
Because you are providing services to these families. But one of the things that you and I've talked about all the time is the inability of our systems to recognize the gifts and the capabilities your organization and organizations like yours, meaning ones that come from within the Black community, that are at the table of decision with solutions, but there's been a propensity to ignore or to disregard or marginalize the capabilities that we bring to the problem-solving equation, and that ignoring or dismissiveness is one that, as it turns out, favors using institutions, resources, other people outside of our community. I've said this too often, we get the misery, they get the money. And so there's a certain political and cultural, and I call it chauvinistic edge to the process of managing misery, dysfunction, trauma in our community, that at the one hand tells us that we don't have the ability to be players in deciding how to fix problems. On the other hand, gives power to those who have a demonstrated track record of failing to serve us. And I bring this up because Youssef, I think, raised the question of the $1 trillion investment that we've made in Afghanistan in the past 20 years.
Tens of trillions.
$1 trillion plus, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think either Colonel Rabb or was saying how veterans are hearing, oh, there's no money. But that just reminds me, Colonel Rabb, of us growing up in the Vietnam era and before that, being told that once the war is over, the country will focus on eliminating the unfairness and the racism against the Black community.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were patriotic.
Yes.
And we stood up saying, okay, we'll suffer, we'll wait a little longer. But as soon as the war wound down, the environment emerged as the prime cause for engagement and another reason to not deal with the inequity that our communities face. I'm throwing it out there. Brunel, what do you think?
Well, I do remember the peace dividend that was promised, and very little of it was seen. Uh, that is always going to be an issue. Our society, the way our country operates, is that the people who bring the political forces to the table, including the financial aspects of it, are the ones who get the attention. And what this is saying to me is we had better be about increasing our presence politically and financially.
Well, if I can jump in, because I'm going to have to run, because
Go ahead.
Senator Hayden is coming over to help me raise some money. Vernell, Harold Mazzell and Peggy Mazzell told me to tell you hello.
All right. Glad to hear it.
Yeah. But here's the deal. Here's the real deal.
You're a little off camera, Dr. Hayden. So move. There you go.
Over here?
There you go. That's it.
Okay. I didn't want you to see me.
You're going incognito.
But you asked me, Al, when I came on, what was those things topics that was on my mind? And I said, looking out my window, 2 people got shot and killed yesterday in North Commons Park.
Oh, son.
I can tell you, with Colonel Rapp, that the 10 people that's been killed over the last 2 weeks have not just been young people, but have been veterans. You follow me? So here we are trying to, and that's why I'm meeting with Senator Hayden. I'm trying to raise money because I can't get money to treat veterans. Veterans need to be treated differently from a cultural specific way. And I can't do it because the people downtown says, we got this. So they get the white folks to build the buildings that they want the brothers and the veterans in, and I'm locked out. So I'm continuing to have to rely upon Al McFarlane Insight News and KMOJ to get the word out to say that we do a good job after we've been around 45 years. It's crazy. You know, yourself and I talk about it all the time. I mean, it's just crazy. It's a no-brainer. And so my concern is that, it's a lot of things going on. Certainly the chickens are coming home to roost. But at the same time, right now, there are some things we and my view could do that we need to have a debate or a meeting at Turning Point with you distinguished people to see what we can do as a unit.
We're down to the last 30 seconds. I'm going to go around the table one more time for 30 seconds, just impressions, thoughts, and things you want us to think about between now and next week. Start with you, Dr. My cousin, Burnell Powell, Dean Powell.
I'm thinking that we need a segment that we can close on. The most disturbing thing that I've heard all week, Dr. Hayden's report about the veterans being killed outside his window would certainly be one of those things on my list. But the other thing that would be on my list was a New York Times piece that talked about the endowment of Black or HBCUs. And it essentially said that if you take the 3 top endowments for our HBCUs, Howard, Spelman, and Hampton, they would be dwarfed by the endowment of the richest prep school in the country. Think about that.
Okay, Youssef, impressions, thoughts.
Colonel Rabb, we need to convince the military to take one of them supersonic stealth jet fighters off the table, and there would be enough money to serve veterans all across this country. And I just want to tell everybody to be safe and take care until we hook up again. It's always a pleasure.
Brenda Lyle, unmute, and what are your comments, your thoughts, feelings? Unmute. There we go.
I just want us to remember our children have gone back to school and they need our support.
and their mask.
Mm-hmm.
Kamal
Yeah,
King.
vaccine was what helped the parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, it always amazes me about how people talk about, our veterans, but the veterans always seem to get the short end of the stick. Let me put it that way. Always seem to get the short end of the stick.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I don't even know where to start. I guess one thing that was kind of implied, but I'll just say it directly, is that a lot of these conservative nuts out there and right-wing types who are claimed to be so patriotic, very few of them are actually military veterans.
And I'll leave the last word to you, Colonel David Rebb. And brother, thank you again for your service. What are your impressions in closing this conversation?
It's my leadership philosophy. And we have to have philosophy. And that is, part of leadership is creating leadership. Part of the mission is to create the mission. And community heals, isolation kills.
There we go. Wonderful, wonderful, perfect. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. See you again tomorrow. Take care.
Thank you, Al.
Goodbye, everybody.
All right, goodbye.
Oh, Queen Justice, where are you? Did they beat you up or no? Lock you on the ground, take the crown away from you? Oh, Lady Liberty, red, white, and blue. Did they take your dignity with their bigotry? Teach you that you're born to lose? Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough of all the rules you break. We've had enough of all the money you make. We've had enough, no more life at stake. We've had enough, this is a proclamation. It's been 400 years and we're 400 late. Together we stand from state to state. Going back in time won't make America great. We need justice now, people won't wait. Action, no more distraction. Every step we take, we gain traction. If it can happen to one, it can happen to all. United we stand, divided we fall. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough of all the rules you were breaking. We had enough of all the money you were making. We had enough, no more life gets taken. We had enough, this is a proclamation. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. You better believe, just roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough of all the rules you're breaking. We've had enough, all the money you're making. We've had enough, no more life gets taken. We've had enough, this is the proclamation. We've had enough. Trayvon Martin and Tommy Rice. We've had enough. Michael Brown and Eric gonna pay the price. We've had enough. Philando, Breonna, George Floyd. What? We've had enough. So many gone. How can we fill the void? How can we feel? We've had enough.